Hello and welcome to 101 Code. My name is Moaz Nashawi. If you like our videos, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you can get all the new updates. In this video, we're gonna talk about interfaces in object-oriented programming Java. First, we're gonna see the definition of interfaces, and after that, we're gonna discuss how we can create and implement interfaces in Java project. And we're also gonna see some of the interfaces, properties, and rules. And finally, we're gonna see some usage scenario where interfaces come in handy. So without any further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk about the definition of interfaces. The interface in a definition is a programming structure or syntax that allow computer to enforce certain properties on object or class. In simple speaking, I like to call interfaces as a list of mandatory requirements. So you build an interface and you put your mandatory requirements or methods inside this interface, and after that, any class who implement this interface should implement those mandatory methods. The interface is very good to put some rules for the project from the start, and it also acts as a guideline for all developers who work on the project to follow. So let's see how we can create and implement some of those interfaces inside Java. In our example, we're gonna build a car factory application, which developer must build classes for each car. So we're gonna, as a guideline, we're gonna first build an interface, create an interface called car essential parts, and this car essential part will have the mandatory methods, which is engine, steering mechanism, and brake system. In real life, if you want to build a car, each car must have engine and steering mechanism and brake system. And in application, we're gonna force this concept by creating the interface, and any classes that's gonna be created by any developer implements this car essential part, and in a row will implement all the mandatory methods on it. So let's get to Java. Let's open IntelliJ, and here I have a Java application with a Maven build, and I have a main method here to bootstrap the application. As we said, let's start our project, and let's build our interface, which we'll call it car essential parts. And this is gonna be an interface. And as you can see here, it's gonna be a public and the keyword interface to define an interface. Inside this interface, we said will have three methods: engine, steering mechanism, and the brake system. So first one is void. You can here define the type, the method type, return type. So it's void engine. And here, and as you can see, there is no body for the method. We're gonna get to this. And we have the other one is void steering mechanism, and also no body. And the third one is brake system. Now we have all those three methods, and as you can see, those methods has no body. They have no body because it's only a guideline. It's only saying inside the interface that any class implement this interface should have those methods. It's list of requirements. So now let's say that we want to build our first car in the factory, and it's gonna be a BMW X5, for example. So we're gonna create a class called X5, and it's a normal class. And inside this class, we're gonna say here, implement the car essential part, which is our interface. And as you can see, immediately after we implement the car essential parts, we now have an error. The error that said that this interface has mandatory methods to be implemented, and you should implement those methods. So I'm using IntelliJ, it gives you automatic implementation. Now, as you can see, I have the method and the body of the method, and with the annotation of at override. And now any car we want to build and we implement this interface should have those methods. Let me put something simple inside the engine method to try it. Let's say this is engine. And now let's start to use this class inside our main. I'm gonna instantiate a new instance of the x5 class, or the car here, new x5. And now I can say x5 dot, you can see the method engine, brake system, and steering mechanism. Here, let me run this application. We're gonna get this is engine. So this is how we force those methods to be implemented by using the interface. Now we understand how the interface generally works and what is the purpose of the interface. Let's start to see some properties of the interface and some rules of interface implementation. The first is that you can have a method with the body inside your interface, and we called it default method. So if you like to have any method with the body of the method, so there's some execution logic inside the interface, we use the keyword default, then the type, the return type of the method, and the name of the method. And let's say this is doors, open door. Like if you want to do a default method, now we have the body, and let's put something simple here to try it. And this is open door. Now you can have a method, and in this method you don't need, it's not mandatory to override and implement this method inside the x5 class. So it's you see here we don't have any errors. And now if you go to the x5 to the main, when we instantiate our class and we try to see what do we have as a method, you will see that we have also the open door, and if we run, we're gonna get also this is open door. So this is default methods inside the class. The second thing we're gonna talk about is that you can have also a static methods inside the interface. And let's say put the keyword static and the return type a closed door, for example. And now, as you can see, we have error because as a static, you should also define the body of the method. So here, let's put something simple as usual. This is closed door. Now, since you have a static method here, you can call it without instantiating a new class. So for example, you can say right away car essential part dot closed door. Let me comment those ones, and let's run the project. And you can see we have this is a closed door. So in interface, you can also have static methods. The third thing we're gonna talk about that you can define variables inside the method. And the defined variables are always public and static and final. So let's say that I need to have a string variable, this string var here, inside the class, and let's call it this is string var. Now, as you can see, there's no error, and also we didn't put any keyword as a static or any keyword as a final. And if we put it, you're gonna find it like it's not in a gray color because it's redundant. So that's mean either if you write it or you didn't write it, it's automatically, the interface knows automatically that any variable you define inside the interface body is gonna be a static, public, and final. And I mean by static, public, final that you can here call it as we call a method. So let's print something and say car essential parts dot string var. Now we can, if we run the project, we're gonna get the value. And I mean by final that you can, it's like a constant, you can't change the assigned value. So you can't say like, for example, car essential part dot string var is equal to anything. You are gonna get error because this is final. So that's what I mean. In public, it's the access modifier, it's clear. The next thing we're going to talk about is you can have a private methods inside the interface, and that's produced in Java 9 and later. So, and I mean by private method, maybe sometimes you have some logic that you want to do inside the interface, and you need some of the default methods to implement and use this logic. So let's say that private void internal, let's say internal thing or internal action, for example, and let's close it. And we also need to have body for it because everything's gonna be done inside this interface. And let's say that, so also this is internal. Now, because it's a private, you're not gonna have access for it inside your main class or inside any class that implement this interface. But for example, inside your default method, you can use this method, and we can say here internal actions, internal action. And now if we call open door from the main method here, we're gonna get this method working from inside the interface. Now let's talk about some rules of the interface implementation. The first rule said that a class may implement unlimited interfaces. So that's mean if you have two interfaces, you can implement in the same class. Let's create another interface to try it. And let's say that we need to create, let's for example say car policy interface. And now let's put a one method inside of it, engine, also, or let's say policy. And let's go here. We can also here implement the second one, which is car policy. And you can see we have also an error now because we need to implement the method of car policy. Once we implement it, now the error is gone. So this is the first rule. The next rule we're going to talk about is that each interface can extend another interface. So it's acting like a class in this manner. So for example here, the interface car policy can extend the interface of car essential parts, and it's gonna have the properties of or the list of requirements and all the mandatory methods and default methods. Now, after we understand the interface and we see some rules and the properties, let's see the most two case scenarios where interface came in hand and came in help. The first scenario is when you have you are a team lead developer in a project. So now you're launching a new project, you are putting the diagrams, the UML and all the things, and you need to define an interface. You need to define rules for all the developers. Let's say that you have 3 junior developers with you inside the team, and working with junior developers usually is gonna be hard. So you're not gonna be able to tell them like by words like you should implement all those 3 methods for any class of the car that you wanna build. So instead you defined this guidelines and these rules inside those interfaces, and you provide those interfaces for those seniors, and you tell them, for example, any class, any car class that you want to define, you should implement the interface of car essential parts, and that's gonna make them in result to define all the mandatory methods. That's the first usage scenario. The second usage scenario, let's say that you are a new developer inside a new agency or a new company, and there's already a running project and old project. If that project already has its interfaces written, so it has its rules, you can read the documentation and you understand now as a new developer that if you want to build a car class, you need to implement this interface, and you're gonna find that the errors is gonna guide you to put all the mandatory methods inside this class. So it's gonna be a very good guideline for you to use interface. And interfaces in usual is very important part of object-oriented programming. That's it for this video. In next videos, we're gonna talk more about Java and object-oriented programming. Until then, if you like our videos, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you can get all the new updates.